Okay, hi everyone. I just wanted to touch base since I just finished grading the first module assignment so that you already have that in there. I want to make sure that you see that there is both a grade but also a comment. So you should see some specific feedback about your performance in the module. A couple of housekeeping items. So as I mentioned in my last announcement, I think I set this one up in a way that I don't love because everybody kind of started their own thread, which in some ways I think was productive to keep each article separate. But I think in practice for most of the conversations that we have, it's going to flow better if we kind of have one conversation that leads into a broader, deeper conversation rather than trying to keep track of 20 different conversations. So for the next discussion, you'll see that everything will flow in one order, and then we'll check in to see if we like that approach better. I think we will. The other thing I wanted to mention is I did get some questions from you, and I did see a lot of questions being asked of one another. So I'm glad to see that you're so engaged in the conversation, but B, I want to make sure that you know my expectation is not for you to interact with every other student in the discussion, but to interact with a few. So if you don't hear otherwise, it'll be about 2 to 3 interactions I'm looking for, and I'm looking for those interactions to be more substantial. So rather than having a lot of, small kind of comments or quick questions to throw at one another, I would like you to kind of target those questions and also to answer any question. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a question that's posed directly to you. Anyone can answer any of the questions. So I'll be throwing some questions out there. As the semester progresses, I'll probably back off more and let you carry on the conversation, but I like to be involved in the beginning. And whenever I pose a question or someone else poses a question, anyone can jump in and respond to that. So I want to make sure that that is the way that you understand the discussions to how they will happen. So even though you might even pose a question specifically to someone about something that they said, other people can chime in with their responses. Now, when you're responding, I am looking for you to do a couple of different things. I did notice the trend in this conversation was much more at the practitioner level, which makes sense because most of you are current educators, and that's the lens that you look at your world through right now, and it makes complete sense. But as you know, this conversation that we're going to have throughout the semester is focused on the leadership lens. So I am going to ask you to take your, educator hat off and think more like a leader of educators. How are you going to promote innovation for educators? What kinds of activities, strategies, approaches will you use to engage educators? And certainly you want to give them the opportunity to be creative and innovative and to spark their, kind of intellectual ideas and collaboration among colleagues. But you also, we're going to have to balance that with some of the accountability to make sure that everyone is, putting students first and helping ensure that our practices, even though some of them may be well-intentioned, we need to know whether they really truly are beneficial. So just wanted to remind you that we will be looking through that leader lens versus educator lens. So I tried to ask you some questions surrounding that when I saw us kind of getting a little too practitioner focused. I'll continue to do that throughout the rest of the semester because I know it's going to be human nature to go back to the lens you're comfortable with. So I'm going to be stretching you to bring it up a notch and look at it from a different tier. And I think that'll be a value to you to learn that skill set throughout this semester. So in terms of the conversation, you would see my feedback on it. I think you had hopefully you found the ASCD website to be a good resource for you, and I encourage you to go back and visit that. And I think I mentioned earlier, it's probably a great idea to become a member. It's not too expensive. I think there are different tiers where you can even get some books included. So not a bad approach for you to think about staying really up to speed. Consider signing up for some of the listservs that are free to stay abreast of what's happening in the administrator world and what kinds of conversations are taking place. Now, so A, that's great. You use some good resources. B, I think you were totally engaged in the conversation. I just want to see a more thorough, more deeper conversations versus superficial quick and dirty, kinds of questions. So I will ask that you're going to carefully think about the questions that you ask, and that the questions will help your colleagues and classmates, think more deeply, kind of moving up the Bloom's taxonomy, the pyramid, to get at the higher level critical thinking skills. And then for your responses, I'm encouraging you and actually expecting you to certainly give examples. I think that's always valuable. So let many of you have very rich examples from the education world. What we're going to need to do is look for educational leadership examples, not just at the practitioner level. So if you don't have those specifically, you'll want to think about how you can find some of those. And I really want you to start digging into some of the additional research out there. So you can look at the readings for this class, the text that we're using. You can look at websites like the ASCD. You can look in the library databases. But as people pose questions, my intent is for you to then dive deeper to find out more about that topic and demonstrate that you know that. Please cite all the sources using APA style, like an in-text citation, the author and the year would work great, and then the full citation at the bottom in case anyone wants to reference that and go and read a little bit more on it. Okay, so I think that gives you some general feedback on the first discussion. This next discussion that we're getting ready to embark on is a little different. It's called Save the Last Word for Me. And as you saw in the introduction, you're going to choose a quote, and then you'll be interacting. You don't need to interact with everyone. You need to respond to 2 or 3, because I think it was really overwhelming, the number of responses we had in the first one. And if we keep at that pace, we're going to exhaust ourselves. I know I'm feeling tired myself already, and I'm sure you're feeling the same way. Lots of great contributions, but we want to keep them more focused. We don't need so many of them. The next thing I wanted to mention is I'm going to host a live session. This is not mandatory, but strongly encouraged. So we'll do this periodically throughout the semester. The first one will happen this Friday at 4 o'clock. So if you're able to join us, you would just click on the live session link, and then you should just be able to click join the session. It'll be my first time using the Blackboard Collaborate tool in the class, so if something goes awry, just shoot me an email, we'll figure it out. I will hopefully remember to record the session so that if you're not able to be there live, you can benefit from the dialogue afterwards. But because this is our first live session, I really am not planning to do a presentation per se, but really have a dialogue and conversation with you about how the class is going, questions that you have, and the content that we're already diving into. So that'll be from 4 to 5 on Friday. I was thinking that most of you are probably done with your day at that time. If that time is not good for you, just let me know, and we'll look for a different time in the future. Okay, I think that's it for now. I look forward to seeing you online. Take care.